Okay. All right, we're continuing on with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and we're 5 pages into chapter 19, the Master and his injured arm. 4, 5. And we're on the question the devotee is asking, why do we not feel intense restlessness to realize God? And he's been talking about this a little bit, but I was reading the last week's passage, and something really caught my eye, because I've always had this beef with God, with kind of a pet peeve, in that I just don't think it's fair the way he has set the game up, and I'm assuming that he did it and that I didn't do it. If I did it, then it's perfect, I'm sure. But I think that he set it up incorrectly, and he gives me the evidence that I need for my court case at the end here when we meet, when I yell at him for making it so difficult. Master says, if but once God should give a man a taste of divine joy, then man would not care to lead a worldly life. The creation would come to an end. There you have it. His own admission, God's own admission that he made it too hard to get out of right away, because he wanted to have fun and have it go on. So how can I be blamed? How could it be my fault that I have not yet realized God? So in this last section there, he's talking about just how much more enjoyable God is, the divine is, than the world is, because the divine joy lasts and is always available to you, and doesn't take it takes quite a bit actually to to get to the point where you can enjoy it, or you can even find it. He's hidden that pretty well, but once you kind of know what cupboard to look under, it's always there when you go looking. So where there's that can be said. So why do we not feel this intense restlessness to realize him? The Master, well, a man does not feel restless for God until all of his worldly desires are satisfied, right? Until we stop engaging in all of the distractions that are available out there. We never think to turn around, to turn inward and look at God. All of our pleasures come from out there, so all of our attention goes out there. And as long as the colors are bright and there's lots of glitter and glam and fun stuff to look at, we're just happy to be distracted, right? We would rather sit there and flip through YouTube videos than go to bed and get a good night's sleep. I don't know where that example came from, but this is our trouble. We've got this outgoing mind that's very much like a toddler. And sometimes it's easier just to play along than it is to try and control it, to try and discipline ourselves. And so the Master is saying, it might seem like that, Swami C. It might seem like it's worth, playing around rather than disciplining the mind. But if you have just one taste of it, nothing else will suffice. That will be your longing for the rest of your days, to know the divine. That's the intensity of what we're talking about. So a man does not feel restless for God until all of his worldly desires are satisfied. He does not remember the mother of the universe until his share of the enjoyment of lust and greed is completed. A child absorbed in play does not seek his mother, but after his play is over, he says, "Mother, I want my mother." Hriday's son was playing with the pigeons, calling them, "Come, come, Titi." When he had enough of playing with the pigeons, he began to cry. Then a stranger came and said, "Come with me, I'll take you to your mother." Unhesitatingly, he climbed on the man's shoulders and was off. Those who are eternally free do not have to enter worldly life. Their desire for enjoyment has been satisfied with their very birth. So this notion, of being finished with the world, there's two ways that that's going to happen. One is through experience. You just eventually get burned out by it. If you're a thinking person, if you're not a thinking person, then you may never get tired. You may never get tired of it. You just don't think in those terms. You're not analyzing in those terms, and all you need is that little bing from the bell, and you're back again at the same time tomorrow for that same bing, and you're not concerned about that. But it's the person who's kind of watching the big picture and is like, why am I coming to this bell every afternoon, for my bing? Why am I doing this? Why am I designing a whole life about being at the bell every day at 4 o'clock? All metaphorical. But we don't feel, without thinking, we don't realize the enslavement. We don't realize the bondage. We just call it life. We call it enjoyment. We don't think about it much more than that. And so we build a life of bondage for ourselves. We build a very small and comfortable cage that makes us feel like we're in charge and that we're in control. And time passes slow enough that it seems like it's going to be there forever. 16-year-old me never imagined he would look like this one day. I thought I was going to be that person that looked 16 for my whole life, the first one ever. And we sort of have this idea. I was just talking to a young person this morning who was saying that to me. Oh no, I'm going to always be active. She was saying, I'm always going to be active. I'm just going to exercise and stay active and just not let age define me. And I was like, yes. I said, in 10 more seconds, you're going to say that age is only a number. And she laughed. How do you know that? I said, because everybody under 30 says that. Yes, you are. You're seeming to be immortal. You'll go on forever. That's the notion. It's the greatest mystery in the universe, according to the Upanishads, that all of us live in a world where we're seeing everything end, seeing everybody die, and yet there's just somehow no inkling that we are going to be the one to die. That we don't have another guaranteed day. We absolutely believe we're guaranteed another day. Most of us believe we're guaranteed another 20 or 30 years. Like that. That's how we think of time. And so until we come to that discernment, until we start paying attention in life and start seeing what our days are adding up to, and experiencing that with consciousness, with an awake nature, dare I say woke, an awakened nature, that until we do that, we can't get free. Because one, we don't even realize that we're bound. We just take our suffering in stride. We've gotten accustomed to it. And that's the nature of a relative world. You can live in absolute depravity and grow accustomed to it. If you go into a room and they turn the temperature up 1 degree at a time, they can boil you alive without you even realizing you're cooking, because the mind or the body will keep accommodating, keep adjusting, keep accommodating, just 2 degrees at a time until you're cooked. And so this is the nature of the world. Very rarely, of course, it does happen sometimes, but watching people with addictions, sometimes the level at which we have to actually go in order to wake up can be very intense. We literally on the street, literally in filth, literally no accomplishments, no family, no friends. And then finally one day we wake up, with our chin on the gutter, like, oh, what am I doing out here? Why am I living like this? And then you get it together and pull yourself out. But see, all these things conspire against us: a relative world, an outgoing mind, and thoughtless living. Those three things really cause us to enjoy and adjust to our dilemma, to our slavery. So when we get tired, we call out to Mother. We're like, no, please, not this anymore. I want something meaningful. I want something that touches my heart. I want something that's worth living for, that's worth spending our life on. Those who are eternally free, though, of course, I don't know anybody like that, but I guess those people around, these bodhisattvas, these people who give their life, give themselves to the world for the betterment of the world, who just don't ever find that attraction for the world. They know from the beginning what it's all about, and so they go forward. That's a great blessing, and we can have that just by paying attention. By not forgetting that we're in the presence of the divine, and keep measuring our life by these beautiful ideals rather than by our compromised ideals, which is usually the people around us. Oh, I'm better than such and such. Well, at least I didn't do what such and such did, And so when we measure by people around us, we're measuring by a relative standard that will just go down with us. Because as you sink, you tend to hang out with people who are sinking, right? And so you still look around thinking everything's all right. You don't realize that you're descending. So at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Dr. Madhusudan arrived. While he prepared the bandage for the master's arm, Sri Ramakrishna laughed like a child and said, "Hey, you are the Madhusudan." Right? The little number here says, it's also a name of Krishna. You are the Madhusudan of both this world and the next. The doctor smiling, I only labor under the weight of my name. The master smiling. Why is the name a trifling thing? God is not different from his name. Satyabhama tried to balance Krishna with gold and precious stones, but he could not do it. Then Rukmini put a tulsi leaf with the name Krishna on the scales, and then the scales came in balance. The doctor was ready to bandage the master's arm. A bed was spread on the floor, and the master, laughing, lay down upon it. He said, intoning the words, this is Radha's final stage. But Brindi says, who knows what is yet to be? The devotees were sitting around the master. He sang to them. The gopis are all gathered about the shore of the lake. Sri Ramakrishna laughed, and the devotees laughed with him. So you just see his mind always in that realm. Here he is getting his arm treated for being pulled out of the socket or maybe broken. And he's laughing with the doctor, and he likes the doctor's name because his name is Krishna. And then he's going on singing this song about all the gopi girls sitting and dancing or standing and dancing around the fire, with their beloved Krishna. And he's seeing the room full of devotees with him now, and he's laughing and singing while he's having his broken arm tended to. After his arm was bandaged, he said, I haven't very much faith in your Calcutta physicians. When Shambhu became delirious, Dr. Sarvatikari said, oh, it is nothing. It is just grogginess from the medicine. And a little while after, Shambhu breathed his last. Okay. I wouldn't trust them either. It was evening and the worship in the temples was over. A few minutes later, Adhar arrived from Calcutta to see the master. Mahimacharan, Rakal, and M were in the room. Adhar, how are you? Master affectionately. Look here, how my arm hurts. Smiling. You don't have to ask how I am. Look at me, I'm suffering. Adhar sat on the floor with the devotees. The master said to him, please stroke here gently. Adhar sat on the end of the couch and gently stroked Sri Ramakrishna's feet. The master conversed with Mahimacharan. Master, it will be very good if you can practice unselfish love for God. A man who has such love says, O Lord, I do not seek salvation. I do not seek fame or wealth or the cure of a disease. None of these do I seek. I want only you. Many are the people who come to a rich man with various desires. But if someone comes to him simply out of love, not wanting any favor, then the rich man feels attracted to him. Prahlada had this unselfish love, this pure love for God without any worldly end. Mahimacharan sat in silence. The master turned to him. Now let me tell you something that will agree with your mood. According to the Vedanta, one has to know the real nature of one's own self. But such knowledge is impossible without the renunciation of ego. The ego is like a stick that seems to divide the water in two. It makes you feel that you are one and I am another. When the ego disappears in samadhi, then one knows Brahman to be one's own inner consciousness. One must renounce the I that makes one feel I am Mahimi Chakravarti, I am a learned man, and so on. But the ego of knowledge does not injure one. Shankaracharya retained the ego of knowledge in order to teach mankind. One cannot obtain the knowledge of Brahman unless one is extremely cautious about lust, about women. Therefore, it is very difficult for those who live in the world to get such knowledge. However clever you may be, you will stain your body if you live in a sooty room. The company of a young woman evokes lust even in a lustless man. But it is not so harmful for a householder who follows the path of knowledge to enjoy conjugal happiness with his own wife now and then. He may satisfy his sexual impulse like any other natural impulse. Yes, you may enjoy a sweetmeat once in a while. Mani Macharan laughs. It is not so harmful for a householder. All right, so there we go. Right. One potential advantage for being a householder there is that the absolutes are not so important. And actually, the practice of bhakti, also covers a lot of our imperfections. That falling in love with God is really the primary thing. We can't really. Yeah, I find in spiritual life that when you keep your eyes on the don'ts, you do. If your attention stays on the don'ts, you're going to end up doing. And so you always have to keep your ideal alive. Keep your eye on the divine. Keep your eye on love. Keep your eye on bliss, on the presence, and make your renunciation about what you're going after and not about what you're leaving behind, right? Because no matter how ready you are to leave it behind, when the mind has to say goodbye to something forever, the mind will turn it into a huge excuse of why that is so difficult and what a momentous thing that has to be done. And oh my God, I could never do that, and then it starts offering you compromises. So be careful about these things. Break that egoism, because we've said the reason that we haven't realized God is only egoism. That's the only reason. The only reason is because we have this fundamental assumption that we're separate and apart from God. And so then the mind conjures a world in which that is verified, in which that seems to be true, that we do seem to be separate from God, right? And so it's because of that notion that we have this separateness, we have this notion, and by notion, I mean a really tightly held belief that we're imperfect and that we need salvation, or we need grace, or we need, God in all those ways. And if we could just make the same assumption at the same level, that God is love, a perfect love, an unconditioned love, that would take us much farther in a much greater joy, to a much higher height, than to be looking around worrying about the things we're leaving behind and collecting a bunch of do's and don'ts in the name of a religion, rather than collecting the freedom of the moment, a constant remembrance of the infinite potential of this moment, that you don't have to be the same you that you were yesterday. That today doesn't have to, or tomorrow doesn't have to be lived the same way you live today. And this is one of the things that I'm starting to pay more attention to. It's a very troublesome thing to see, in that, yesterday didn't work. I didn't realize God yesterday. And so I have to admit, sit and think about what I could change about today in order to have that success today, to realize God today. And basically, I've just lived the same day again that I lived yesterday. And guess what? I haven't realized God. And if we continue that pattern, then the last day of my life is going to be a very depressing day from that perspective. right? So if we're serious about this, and I'm asking myself this question more, actually more than I'm asking you that question, it's like, if you keep on this way, what's the point? If it's not working, it ain't going to work. So go inside, sit with the mother. Thakur used to complain bitterly in tears to mother every day at the end of the day if he hadn't realized her or seen her. You know, he rubbed his face in the dirt and cried. He's like, another day has passed in vain. Why have I not yet seen you, mother? Please, please, please let me see you. Right? And so we get up and we try again. But our days should be different. At least it seems that way to me. It seems like I feel like that's a big hole in my life. I don't like those holes, but yeah, now I feel like I need to do something about that. I'll have to think about that one. I'll get back to you tomorrow with that. Right. So we can't obtain this knowledge of Brahman, this highest truth of our existence, unless we're extremely cautious about our desires, about especially about sex, because sex. The reason it's such a primary thing, or why religion seems to focus on it so much, is there's a couple of reasons. One, it's a path, it's a direction that's reinforced by the body. The body pushes us in that direction. You know, the mind brings it up and places it in front of us. And to engage in that, you have to absolutely be convinced that you're a body. And you have to be absolutely convinced that other people are bodies. And your partner has to not only be a body, but has to be the right kind of body, right? And has to have all the list of attributes that are necessary for that engagement. And so just practicing, you know, just dipping your enjoyment into the sex habit, or the sex desire, reinforces it so in an overwhelmingly powerful way. You know, I mean, it gives you that memory of a very really one of the purest pleasures that we have in the material world. You know, but it's also the quintessential uh, power, because it, more than anything, will take you all the way down. It'll take you all the way down. You know, in my previous life, you know, before I knew better, before I learned better, you know, I thought that the answers were there, and I can say that the search for answers in that direction will exhaust you. It will take everything from you. You will no longer be able to enjoy a moment without the thought of it, without the quest being in your mind all the time. And the more you indulge, the more picky you become, right? About what's necessary and what you like and what you don't like. And it gets into a terrible, it literally runs your life. And this is why the scriptures, and why Thakur, and why Jesus and Buddha and Rama all were so emphatic about this. They're like, this is the one thing that the mother added to the puzzle. You know, before she had added lust and greed to the puzzle, God's complaint was, well, people keep realizing God. They don't stay in the game long enough for it to keep going. And so mother said, oh, well, let's bring in a little bit of lust and greed. Let's just put a little sprinkling of lust and greed in there. And then she laughs, giggles to herself, and says, the game's been going on in full swing ever since. Right? So she got us. She knew. And so look beyond, look through it. Don't define yourself by your body or by your mind. Define yourself, if you have to define yourself by something. Try to do it from the inside out. That will at least lead you in the right direction. From the outside in, it just gets smaller and smaller. But from the inside out, you start pretty expansive, and you have to keep getting more expansive, because there's just not a lot of attributes in there that have limits. All right. So, but it's not so harmful for a householder. All right. So you can take some comfort in that, but not too much. But it is extremely harmful for a sannyasi. He must not look even at the portrait of a woman. A monk enjoying a woman is like a man swallowing the spittle he has already spat out. Right? Jesus says that to go back to your vices is like re-swallowing your own vomit. So he gets even more graphic, right? And so to go back to your old pleasures after you've started on the spiritual path, it's get a graphic image of it. He's saying it's like looking at a dog that's licking up vomit off of the sidewalk. It's like it's unbecoming of you. Let's not go in that direction anymore. Let's just say it's unbecoming to think that there's anything there worthwhile. And so when the mind is conspiring, when the ego is trying to push in that direction, know and remind yourself deeply, it is not worthwhile. There is nothing to be had from that bin, that's the bin of slavery, the bin of entrapment. A sannyasin must not sit near a woman or talk to her, even if she is intensely pious. No, he must not talk to a woman, even though he may have controlled his passion. A sannyasi must renounce both lust and greed. As he must not look even at the portrait of a woman, so also he must not touch gold. That is to say, money. It is bad for him even to keep money near him, for it brings in its train calculation, worry, insolence, anger, and such evils. There is an instance in the sun. It shines brightly, and suddenly a cloud appears and hides it. That is why I didn't agree to Marwari's depositing money for me with Hriday. I said, no, I won't allow even that. If I keep money near me, it will certainly raise clouds. It will certainly cause confusion. And I'm seeing that even in myself. Out here in the monastery, there was just no money. You just didn't have it. If you had it, it was because somebody had given you some to go get groceries or something for the monastery. So I have to say, that not having worried about it or not even having to think about it in the monastery was a great advantage. And when I stepped out here into the world, even though I'm just kind of 1 foot in the world, money has become a thing, and just kind of making sure that there's enough, and and as it accumulates, you can't, I've really found that I've had to push it completely out of mind. And just tell my mind literally, it's none of your business. I won't let myself look at the accounts. I won't let myself calculate about whether there's enough for next month. I'll just be like, there's fine. That's mother's business, not my business. And I really encourage you, even as a householder, if you're going to deal with money, really treat it like it's none of your business. It's so much better that way. It stops you from just getting hooked again and again and again, on things, and it really distorts the world. It doesn't let you enjoy life freely. So really give it to mother and leave it there. Leave it at her feet. Right? Why all these strict rules for a sannyasi? It is for the welfare of mankind, as well as for his own good. A sannyasi may himself lead an unattached life and may have controlled his passions, but he must renounce lust and greed to set an example to the world. A man will have the courage to practice renunciation if he sees 100% renunciation in a sannyasi. Then only will he try to give up lust and greed. If a sannyasi does not set this example, then who will? This is so true. I look at Swami Prabhupada. I don't have to look any farther than that man and that incredible life that he lived. And that mother placed me there for 12 years, 13 years in that environment, watching this man who I honestly, in my estimation, I couldn't see a fault. He was so steady and he was always disciplined. I never saw him let go. I never saw him just, go off and watch read some novel or something. He was always on the straight and narrow. And I'm so grateful for that because of exactly what Thakur is saying here. Because just watching him live that way for those 15 years or so uh, really held me to the ideal. It made me believe in the ideal. I was like, see, this can be done. Look at this man. This is possible. You can have that level of discipline. You can do this. And so just seeing a real world example of that kind of renunciation not only kept me from leaving the monastery, right? If I had seen any hypocrisy there, I wouldn't have stuck around at all. I would have been like, all right, you too, guys, huh? Well, I'm done with you, right? I don't want it. But seeing that kind of life in someone, uh, I kind of wish I had done more for me getting my act together. But at least it kept me looking in the right direction. It kept my eyes uh, believing, kept my eyes looking and knowing, oh, it is possible. And also just seeing someone live like that, you learn a lot just by watching how they are. Right? There was just no compromise in his life. He never, it's like if the doctor told him no more of this, whatever that was, it was as if that thing disappeared off the chart of elements. I mean, he just never touched it again. And by the end of his life, he couldn't eat anything. There was no oils, no garlics, no salt, no sugars, no vinegar. Just the list went on. And at the end, it was like trying to find him something to eat every day was impossible. He never complained. Never said, "Oh, I wish I could have that." Devotees would bring him plates of sweets as an offering. He couldn't eat them, but he never, said, "Oh, I'll just have a bit." He would touch it to his forehead and hand it to me. He just never. He knew, nope, that's gone for me. And that's the advantage. That's where I have this understanding from about your no's being no. If you mean it when you say it, your mind will not bother you with it. The mind will know that there's no value in that because you have always meant what you said. And so this is why Thakur is, telling us, be people of integrity. If you say no, then by no means is there an exception. No, period. If you say yes, equally, So that's how we keep things in conscious mind. If we start getting weak on our yeses and nos, then things start happening in the background. The mind starts conspiring. The mind knows your weaknesses. It knows how to bring you in. Oh, if we have him look at this first instead of that, then he won't get shocked, and that'll draw him in and make him think about it some more. And we can go down this path, and little by little, compromise by compromise, we'll have him right where we want him. Right? So be careful. This is why Thakur is saying this to us. Be very careful. Even as householders, we have to still be a good example. In that, even though it's not quite as important, you I'm not sure how appropriate my joke would be, but anyway, it's like, we all are responsible for this. I don't like the idea of being an example to the world. I think that's dangerous egotistically. But Thakur has said it, and so it's still got a truth to it, even though we don't really need to think in that way. We should just be thinking about love, ways of serving, ways of helping, ways of being there for everyone. Because certainly that's the reputation religion has gotten. And it's lost a lot of its power and much of its respect because of the practitioners, not because of the religion, but because of the practitioners. All right. So a sannyasin must renounce lust and greed to set an example to the world. A man will have the courage to practice renunciation if he sees 100% renunciation in a sannyasi. Then only will he try to give up this lust and greed. If a sannyasi does not set this example, who will? One may lead a householder's life after realizing God. It's like churning butter from milk and then keeping the butter in water. Janaka lived the life of a householder after attaining Brahmagyana. Janaka fenced with two swords, the one of jnana and the other of karma. The sannyasi renounces action, therefore he fences with one sword only, that of knowledge. A householder, endowed with knowledge like Janaka's, can enjoy fruit from both the tree and from the ground. He can serve the holy man, entertain guests, and do other things like that. I said to the Divine Mother, "Oh, Mother, I don't want to be a dry sadhu, right? I don't want to be one-sided on things." After attaining Brahmagyana, one does not have to discriminate even about food. The rishis of olden times, endowed with the knowledge of Brahma and having experienced divine bliss, ate everything, even pork. Right? So freedom lies in being a Brahmagyani. So don't think that doing what you want is your freedom. That's your bondage. That's a very important point, actually. Probably everybody knows that. But, just in this modern world, especially in this country, because it's part of our ideal as a country, is to be free, right? But what do we think that freedom means? Oh, that means I can do what I want. I live in a free country. You can't tell me what to do. I can do what I want. It's a free country. Well, the problem with that is that the desires that you're chasing don't belong to you. They belong to the body or to the mind. So you're not fulfilling your desires. You are enslaved to a body to fulfill its desires, enslaved to a mind to fulfill its desires. But you're not the one generating the desires. It's your attachment that has provided that lie for you, right? It's your attachment to these things that convinces you that serving them is serving yourself. And when you think you're serving yourself, you think you're free. But when you take a close look, you realize you've been duped. You've been duped because one very important test for you to know whether you are attached or not, or whether you're bound or not, is to understand you are not allowed to say yes to something until you are able to say no to that same thing. When you're able to say no to something, then you've earned the ability to say yes on occasion, right? But if you can't control it, don't compromise into it. You will lose. You will not reach the goal. And we don't want that for any of us. So be careful. Generally speaking, there are two kinds of yoga, karma yoga and mano yoga. That is to say, union with God through work and through the mind. Right? So one involves the body, one involves the mind. There are 4 stages of life: brahmacharya, garhastya, vanaprastha, and sannyas. During the first 3 stages, a man has to perform his worldly duties. The sannyasi carries only his staff, his water pot, and a begging bowl. He too may perform certain nitya karma, but his mind is not attached to it. He is not conscious of doing such work. Some sannyasis perform nitya karma to set an example to the world. If a householder or a man belonging to the other stages of life performs action without attachment, then he is united with God through such action. In the case of a Paramahamsa, like Sukadeva, all karmas, all puja, japa, tarpan, sandhya, and so forth, drop away. In this state, a man communes with God through the mind alone. Sometimes he may be pleased to perform outward activities for the welfare of mankind, but his recollection and his contemplation of God remain uninterrupted. And this is talking about that atmosphere that we've talked about. Your body literally is the shrine. Your spirit is literally the deity in the heart. The heart is the shrine room where you do your worship, where you do your japam, where you sing your songs, where you see the beloved, right? And by establishing yourself there, sitting there to do everything else, sitting in that space first, and from that space of that awareness, then you do everything else in your life, but always from that seat. You never leave that seat. And this is what he's talking about here. These great sannyasis, these great ones, are established there. And the body's carrying on, and the mind is carrying on. But they are not left. They are not leaving their seat of awareness. Through all of it, they never forget that they are a witness, that they're just watching the play of God, right? And so in that, they have that divine atmosphere established within themselves, and it goes with them everywhere that they are. So this is where we want to get to. We don't want to get stuck in the external world. We don't want to get stuck with a list of to-dos every day from our body mind to keep our spirit engrossed in its slavery. In the case of a Paramahamsa, right, all of these karmas drop away because they become aware. They become aware of the fact that they're not the doer. They've paid attention to the workings, the inner workings of themselves, and they've seen quite clearly that the body mind are the wheel of samsara, and that they just roll down the hill according to the accumulated karma that's being kept track of in the mind. That the mind and body know the routine, they know the habits, they know how to get through a day. Your spirit is not necessary for that, except to give them the life or the energy to do it, right? But that there's no conscious necessity for your awareness, for the body mind to carry on with its daily whatnots, just carrying on, just doing what it does, right? And so only through a very deep understanding of your inner self can you see that. You're going to believe that you're the doer because, you've been trained to want what the body wants, to need what the mind needs, right? You haven't been trained to sit in the contentment that is your nature, to sit in the fulfillment of simply being, to find your joy, to not, to be able to sit in the moment and see the miracle of it, to remember the wonder, the mystery of this moment, and to find that more entertaining than anything the senses could give you. This wondering at life, this touching of the Lord, these mysteries that are hidden all throughout your inner self for you to find. It was about 8 o'clock in the evening, and Sri Ramakrishna asked Mahimacharan to recite a few hymns from the scriptures. Mahimi read the first verse of the Uttara Gita, describing the nature of Supreme Brahman. He, Brahman, is one, partless, stainless, and beyond the ether, without beginning or end, unknowable by mind or intelligence. So Brahman is one. Okay, so it's not a multiple. So you are never going to look at it. You're never going to look at it. You can't get out of it. You can't find a perspective from which it can be observed, from which it can be studied, because it is one. There's not two. It's partless. So you're not a part of it, right? It doesn't have parts. There are no boundaries in it. There are no limitations in it. You are that in its entirety, right? Just like you are every dream, because, every night a new dream will play in your mind, and your mind can do it. It can play any dream. It can play any scene. It can create any world. It can create all the universes. So there's no limitation in the self, right? No parts. It's one. It's stainless. It's untouchable. That's what that means. The material world cannot touch spirit. Ramakrishna uses the example: if a room smells bad, the air in it can still be pure. That the smell is not the attribute of the air; it's the attribute of something else. So the air is always pure, even though it can take on a lot of other attributes. So it's partless, stainless, and beyond the ether. So it's not space. It's not just huge. It's actually outside of any measurement. It's outside any value of anything conceived, certainly by a material mind, a mind lost to materialism. It's without beginning or end, right? And really what he's talking about here, immediately you can see he means the moment. Brahman is moment, because the moment has all of these attributes, which is my first illegally thing said tonight. Brahman has these attributes. So this oneness, the moment, contains everything. This moment is one moment. There's never been two moments. We are always in the moment, and it is always the same moment. It's partless, stainless, and beyond the ether. It's without beginning or end. It's unknowable by the mind or the intelligence, because as you approach it with a thought, it gets ever more mysterious. That's why we're always looking for the next particle in physics. At least 4 or 5 times in my life, they have found the smallest particle. And then a couple of weeks after they find the smallest particle, they realize that in that particle, there's the implication of at least 2 other particles that have to be. And so now they go out for the next 20 years to find that other particle. And, that's great, because at least they are starting to realize that it's not as it seems. If you read the modern physics, it takes more faith to believe that than it does anything a scripture says. My New York Times article on the quantum world, they said that the ultimate reality is like a black goo in which no form comes into being unless it's being observed, and where time runs forward and backward simultaneously. So this is the ultimate reality from from that perspective. And you just read those things, you're like, wow, it was certainly a lot easier just to say God. And let God be a black goo that takes form only when observed, that goes forward and backward in time simultaneously, right? You can certainly get there from there. Finally, he came to the 7th verse of the 3rd chapter, which reads, "The twice born worships the deity in fire." So this is a man belonging to the Brahmin, Kshatriya, or Vaishya caste, one who has his second or spiritual birth at the time of his investiture with the sacred thread. And that was somewhat changed by Vivekananda. That definition was broadened anyway. Said a Brahmin is any spiritual seeker, who's dedicated to his spiritual quest. And so everybody's Brahmins at that point. Anybody who's on the spiritual quest, because I was given the sacred thread. At the time of brahmacharya, you're given the sacred thread, and you're supposed to be wearing it and taking care of it, doing all of that. And then at your sannyas, there's a big part of the ceremony where that thread gets cut and thrown into the fire. And the problem was that I had not been given a sacred thread at my brahmacharya, so I had to actually go through a second ceremony at my sannyas in order to get the sacred thread and put it on so that it could be cut off. But anyway, these notions, right? The twice born, the person on a spiritual path, the people who have committed to a path and are going forward in their spiritual life with a certain amount of commitment, worships the deity in fire. The munis contemplate him in the heart. Men of limited wisdom see him in the image. And the yogis who have attained same-sightedness behold him everywhere. That's a great little piece there. So the twice born, the person starting on the path, worships the deity in fire, because fire is fairly formless. It's got its fire and the power to burn, so it's used in quite a few examples about the divine. And certainly, we can certainly know that fire is the source of light, and that light is what gives life to everything. I mean, with no light, there is no life. So we can see where that comes from. The munis can contemplate him in the heart. Those who have, silenced the outside world from themselves, withdrawn their identity from mind, they find the beloved here in the heart, in the form of love. Men of limited wisdom see him in the image. Limited wisdom mean with a certain amount of identification with body-mind. They believe this world to be material and to have an existence outside of God. And so they see God in the image in any of the forms. And the yogis who have attained that same-sightedness see him everywhere. They know this world to be a dream. They know that just like in a dream, everything is made of the sleeper, right? And so in this world, everything is made of our sleeper, God. This is all within God. So we're not looking at things at all. We're looking at God stuff, mind stuff, the same thing we look at in a dream, right? What is it that you're looking at when you look at a flower in a dream? You're not looking at a flower. There are no flowers in your head. There's nothing growing in there, right? So what are you seeing? You're seeing God. You're seeing the reflection of the light of consciousness off of God taking a form in that sense. So the munis live in this understanding always. They never leave it. They know that everything they look at is divine, is God, not in a mapped over projection, but in a fundamental experience. They see this. No sooner did the master hear the words, the yogis who have attained same-sightedness, than he stood up and went into samadhi. His arm supported by the splint and bandage. Speechless, the devotees looked at this yogi who had himself attained the state of same-sightedness. After a long time, the master regained consciousness of the outer world and took his seat. He asked Mahima to recite these verses describing the love of God. The latter recited from the Narada Pancharatra. What need is there of penance if God is worshipped with love? This is a beautiful passage, just so beautiful. What is the need of penance if God is worshipped with love? What is the use of penance if God is not worshipped with love? What need is there of penance if God is seen within and without? What is the use of penance if God is not seen within and without? O Brahman, O my child, cease from practicing further penances. Hasten to Shankara, the ocean of heavenly wisdom. Obtain from him the love of God, the pure love praised by devotees, which snaps in twain the shackles that bind you to the world. Beautiful instruction there. Don't get lost in the things. Don't become a spiritual biologist, learning about all the chakras and the shushumnas and the nerve centers and all those things. They're all fine. It's not at all a forbidding. There's nothing wrong with them. But never think that they're the point. Never think that they're the point, right? Use them to become aware of the nature of your body so that you can place your mind at the feet of God, so that you can be engrossed in the love of God, so that you can feel that devotion within to this supreme ideal. Absolutely. Let those things be a support for that. But never think that that's the point, because all of that is equally unreal. All of those things burn up at realization. And Ramakrishna says there's a danger. There's a danger in doing these physical practices. He says that if you're not careful, they make you think of the body too much. You start becoming concerned with looking young and being healthy and being pure and eating only the right things. And they become obsessions. I saw a person get so obsessed that they died from it, became so cautious about what they ate that they literally starved themselves to death from being obsessed with not eating things, right? So I don't say it lightly. It's like all these things are fine, but they're never the point. What is the point? He tells you right here. He says, "Oh, Brahman, oh, my child, stop practicing these further penances, these payments, these trying to keep things in balance, these, trying to keep the measures perfect all the way through." He says, "Stop this. Hasten to Shankar, the ocean of heavenly wisdom, and obtain from him what? The love of God." Right? Start looking at God. Start putting your attention on the divine, not on all of these penances and practices and rituals and asanas and postures and foods and breathings and all these things that go on and on and on. Like I started, one time I wanted to listen to some music to fall asleep, to stay asleep by. And so I listened to one of these weird, I don't know, it's that some healing. I mean, the claim of the thing was that it had some holy frequency that it would play out that would match the heart chakra and would enliven and wake up the heart chakra. And so, I played that and fell asleep and didn't wake up any different in the morning. But what did change is that my feed now is 90% of these things. Like suddenly 90% of my YouTube feed is all of these sounds promising to bring me enlightenment, promising to open my heart chakra, promising to open the muladhara, promising to, clear the way for the kundalini. It's like all of these things. Okay, fine. Just don't take them out of balance. That's all. There is nothing that is going to replace your renunciation and your discernment, right? There's nothing that's going to replace that. There's no music to do it for you. There's no posture that's going to fix it for you. There's, like Ramakrishna says many, many times, there is nothing equal to the glory of renunciation and discernment. This, this is how we go forward, right? We take the help of all these other things. As much as you find them helpful, absolutely use them, but always understanding that they're a tool for something greater, and that greater thing is love. Being able to become a lover of everyone, regardless of their condition, regardless of their circumstances, that you can love them. This is where we're going. Oh my gosh, 8:05. How does that happen? All right. So let's stop there for this week.